Welcome to the third video of the citation tutorial series. In this series we'll have a look at the flight deck. So by having a look around, first of all, you notice some things. We don't have an overhead panel. We do have a pedestal with the FMS. We have some fuses on the left hand and right hand side. We have the oxygen mask to the back of us, but that's it. It's a pretty simple looking cockpit. If you take a look at this thing, you'll notice it's very left palette centric. So the left palette gets screens, the left palette gets most of the switches, the right palette doesn't. This is because it's certified to be flown single pilot, so most of the controls are on the left hand side. So let's have a look at the yoke first of all. Left and right hand yoke are identical. I'm just gonna talk about the left hand yoke here. We have some few switches on here. First of all, on the right hand side we have the ident switch for the transponder. This is the TCS switch, which temporarily disengages the autopilot trim, and you can basically adjust like the plane's attitude and then let the switch go and the autopilot will capture that. This is not modeled at the moment. Then we have the autopilot disconnect button, we have the pitch trim, and on the other side of the yoke we have the push to talk button. We can hide the yokes by clicking on the base down here. Same for the other one, which is hidden somewhere here in this camera view. Now let's have a look on the left hand side of the plane. So as I said, we have the oxygen mask here, which is not functional at the moment. We have a battery disconnect switch. This is guarded, so in the guarded position the battery is connected, it's in the normal position. We can bring this up and bring it into the disconnect position, and right now the battery in the back is connected, but if I now turn on the battery switch, nothing will happen because this disconnect switch is active. If I now bring this into the normal position by just flipping the guard, you can hear and see that the plane is coming to life. So now we have power. Next is the oxygen control valve. This can be set to crew only, to normal, which means also the passengers will get oxygen, and to manual drop, which will drop the oxygen in the cabin. Next we have, this is for the oxygen mask itself, this is for microphones from the mask and also from the headset. The headset controls right here, they are for the noise cancelling feature, so if we bring this up, you can hear the fan noises getting quieter, so this increases the noise reduction. If you bring this down, we can hear our fans again, so noise reduction decreases. Also, I just realized there is a on and off button for this feature. Very nice, didn't know it was there. This is a switch for the microphone, so usually it's on headset. If we are wearing the oxygen mask, which we can't right now, we can switch that to the oxygen mask. This is an ashtray and it's functional. Next we have circuit breakers on the left hand side, and these are all modeled. Next, let's start with these things that are blinking at us. These are the master caution and master warning reset buttons. You can see we have a caution panel, good old fashioned caution panel on the plane, and by so the new basically the new cautions and warnings are blinking, and by resetting them, so let's reset the cautions. Now I've acknowledged them, and now only the warnings are blinking because they are unacknowledged, and I can now reset them as well. Next to this, we have a chronometer which has 4 functions which we can cycle through with the select button right here. So this is the GMT time, this is local time, this is the flight time. Not sure why this is showing a value at the moment. And this is the elapsed time. This is the only one we can control with the CTL button, so we can press this button to start timing and press this button again to reset it to 0 and then press it again to start timing again. Below that we have an angle of attack indicator. This is one of 3 ways of showing the angle of attack in the plane. Let's just quickly get avionics power on. So this is one. Then we have the AOA indicator here on the PFD. And then we have this thing right here. This is showing an arrow pointing up, meaning we have a too low AOA for our perfect AOA. This can also show an arrow pointing down for the opposite, and a circle, a green circle in the middle, to show that we are in this perfect 0.6 range. When we need a test switch to the LA position, we can see this, so there we go. There you can see the other symbols. Next we have our comm panel. First of all, let's maybe start with the upper left here. So this switch shows us which channel we are sending on. This is COM1, COM2, or the passenger speakers, or in emergency mode. To the right of that, we have our audio source selections. They usually have a speaker off and headphone position. So for example, if we want our ADF on the speakers, you put this one up. If we want it on the headphones, we put all the way down. If we want it off, we put in the middle. So here to the left we have the auto cell button. If it's in the off position, it just won't do anything. We can select it to either speaker or headphone, and if it's active, so if it's in either the speaker or headphone position, it will automatically set to receive whatever we are sending on. So right now you can see that we don't receive COM2. I have 8 tuned in on COM2 right now, but if we set this to send on COM2 right now,
temperature 15, dew point 1,
we can listen to the ATIS.
013.
If I put this into the off position, we cannot hear it anymore. We could send on COM2 but not receive. And if I bring this switch down now,
Hanover, information,
we can
Sierra,
hear it again.
55.
That's a very nice feature. This is the marker beacon. We can also mute that for a certain amount of time. I think it's like 30 seconds or a minute. This voice and ident switch, in real life it's only a two-way switch, and I think what it does, so the ident is just the ident of the nav aids right here, so that will give you the Morse code, I guess. The voice option, I'm not sure what it does, if it will actually tell you the identifiers as letters, I'm not sure. This is not implemented right now, it does not make a change. It does not make a difference in which position it is set. We'll always get the Morse code. Right here we have the volume for speakers and headphones, and also the volume of the passenger speakers. Below the comm panel we have our electric panel, so we can see we have the DC volts. We can also check them for the generators with this spring-loaded switch. Obviously generators are not producing any current right now because yeah, we don't have the engines running. These amps are coming from the generators. They are also not showing anything right now, which is to be expected. If you look at the volts, we can see we start at 25.5. We are losing voltage, so let's bring up the external power via the main menu and connect this. Okay, that looks better. I also already showed you the battery switch. The battery switch actually has 3 positions: a battery position, an off position, and an emergency position. In the emergency position, we only have access to a few critical instruments, such as our N1 indications, only our indications, not so the digital readout, not this one. COM1, NAV1, our altimeter right here. I think that's basically it. We should also have the dome light right here, which is not currently wired. So let's bring that back to the battery. You also already know the Avionics power switch. It is set in on and off position. We have an inverter switch right here for 2 AC inverters and an off position. In more modern versions of this plane, this actually has an auto position, and then you can manually switch to either 1 or 2. In this version, we have to decide if we want to use inverter 1 or 2. I usually switch it on 1 so that I can switch the switches off into the same direction by putting them down. Next we have the generator switches. Generator switches can be in the off position, in the on position, which is not really labeled, and we can reset them, which is a spring-loaded position. Usually you just leave them on. To the left of that we have a test switch. Let's reset the camera for this. This is a very nice thing which I would love to have in other planes as well. All your tests are on one rotary switch. So I usually start by going counterclockwise so that we have the annunciator test first, so we can see that every annunciator is working. And then we have other tests. We have anti-skid failure, we have overspeed, so that's our overspeed sound. We have windshield temperature, which doesn't do anything. This is actually to be expected. There will only be a warning lighting up if the system does not work during test. So what you're looking for is basically no indication. The 180-degree position is just a spare position which is not used. Then you have the AOA with stick shaker. Then we have a battery over temp. We have our landing gear warning, which we can mute with this switch down here. And we have our engine fire switch, which will, or in our engine fire warning test, which will illuminate these switches. And once we press the firewall switches, we'll get the firewall shut-off warning, and the bottles are now armed. And while the test is active, we'll see this red light. If we switch that to the off position, oops, this is out. Very nice feature. Next, this is kind of the fuel and engine related controls. We have ignition switches right here, which are usually in the off position. If we want to turn on an ignition, we can bring that up to the on position, and this green light will light up whenever the ignition is on. To the left of that, we have the engine start switches. So we can start either the left hand or right hand engine with these switches, and we can disengage the starter in the middle. Next we have the fuel boost pumps, which is a 3-position switch. They are usually in the norm position. You can also turn them off or turn them on manually. To the left of that is the fuel transfer switch. So the fuel goes into the direction of the arrow. So in this scenario, the fuel would go from the left tank into the right tank. Below that, we have the de-ice anti-ice panel. This plane has both anti-ice and de-ice systems. We have the pitot static, which is on. For some reason, let's turn that off. So that's the pitot and static cover, not cover, the pitot tube and static port anti-ice switch. Next to that, we have the windshield bleed. So we can set that to high or low. That high or low refers to the temperature of the bleed air coming out. So if this is on, air will come out of these vents right here and help to defreeze the windows. We have the alcohol switch, so if we have an anti-ice failure and we still have ice on the windshield, or we have bleed air failure basically, we have these nozzles right here, and it will spray alcohol on the windshield and help to remove the ice. We only have that on the pilot side though. On the co-pilot side, we don't have these alcohol nozzles. Next, let's jump to the right now. We have the tail de-ice, so for the de-icing boots on the tail. These can be set to auto. In the auto position, they will just inflate in a regular amount of time, or we can manually inflate them for one cycle, basically. Then we have the wing anti-ice and the engine anti-ice, which is one switch. So in the lower position, it will be engine only. So this is engine only, and you can see this also automatically turns on the ignition. And in the upper position, it will be both engine and wing. Then we have the wing crossflow. So if the bleed air of one engine doesn't work, then this will get bleed air from the other engine. So next is the vertical gyro speed switch. I've just turned off the inverter, and now if I turn it on again, it will take some time for this to align. If we bring that into the high position, the alignment period will be shorter, so it will be aligned in within a few seconds. There we go. If you leave that in the high position, during flight you won't be able to engage the autopilot though, so make sure to bring that back into the norm position once you've completed your alignment. Next is our left-hand gyro slave, so this is this gyro for the ND right here. It's usually in auto position. If we bring it over to the man position, we can manually, very, very slowly, change the alignment of the ND right here. You might be more familiar with something like this on the co-pilot side. If we set this to free and then we can operate it using this switch right here, and then set it to slave again, we'll align itself automatically. Same thing with this right here, so if we bring the switch now to the auto position, it will realign itself. It's just a different kind of switch. Next we have lights, so both exterior lights and interior lights. For this, let's set the time of day to night. Okay, now we have nighttime with all the cockpit lighting turned off. Let's have a look at the outside lights first of all. So we have beacon, anti-call, nav, wing inspection. These are just normal 2 position switches. Then we have our landing lights, which can be either set to landing or to recog and taxi mode. Let's jump to the outside. So we can see our landing lights below the plane right here. We can see the wing inspection light right here, which doesn't really shine, but this is very, very dim. We can see the nav light and the beacon on the left-hand wing. We can see, the strobe light on the left-hand wing. We can see our beacon and our rear nav light on the tail. And we have our right nav light and strobe on the right-hand wing. For the internal lighting, we first of all have the floodlight. The floodlight is this light right here. For any of the other light switches to work, we have to turn on this switch. So let's turn this on. And now we can set, let's maybe move the camera down a bit. Now we can use this left light for the left-hand side instrument lights. We have the center light for the center instruments, like this pressure gauge here on the pedestal, and we have the right-hand side for the co-pilot instruments. We also have EL, which is the integrity lights. Back to daytime, let's continue with the bottom of the panel. Have a few switches here. We have our parking brake, which we can pull. We have our rain doors, so if we pull them up, we can see we now have some doors open right here in front of our windshields. So they are used to deflect bleed air over the windshield in order to blow the rain away. Then we have a control lock. So this is a control lock. It locks both the yoke as well as the thrust levers. Right now I cannot bring this thrust lever to its idle position. If I turn off the control lock, I can do that. Then we have an emergency brake and an emergency gear extension. Coming up, we have our gear indication. We have our anti-skid, which can be off or on. And we have our horn signs, which we already used during the test. So there are actually some more switches I forgot to tell you about down here. We have the passenger safety switch. So this is in the off position right now. It's a 3-way position switch. It has the off position, the seat belt position, and the passenger safety position. So if we bring it to the passenger safety position and go to the back of the plane, we can see we have the non-smoking and the fasten seatbelt sign active here. If we bring it to the off position, it will be off, of course. If we bring it to the fasten seatbelt only position, we'll only have the fasten seatbelt sign showing. For the next switch, I will turn off battery. This is the standby driver switch, so this is the standby altitude indicator, and we can test this spring-loaded by holding it down, and then we can turn it on. It will illuminate while the battery is off, and this standby altitude indicator will come to life. If we now turn on the battery, and pay attention to this light, if we now turn on the battery, light will go off. So this is why you test the standby altitude indicator before turning on the battery. Then we have these windshield bleed air controls, which basically just control the amount of bleed air that comes out of these things in front of the windshields on both the pilot's and co-pilot side. Okay, let's move up again. Next we have the autopilot, basically mode control panel. Yeah, we have different modes on the autopilot. We can turn them on and off right here. I'm not going to go into autopilot in detail right now. I'll cover that in some later flight video. So we have some annunciators to the right. The two most important ones are this one and this one in my opinion. So this shows us that autopilot and yaw damper is off right now. If I were to turn on the yaw damper, then only the autopilot off button would actually illuminate. Not a button, it's a light. Next one is waypoint and message. quick note from me editing this video, the other indicator you saw there lights up when you get either a message from the FMS or when you're about to approach a new waypoint. So next we have the altimeter, nothing special, it's just an altimeter. It's digital though, so it only will work if it has battery power. We can set the barrel reference right here, or we can just put it to standard by pressing this standard switch. Same thing on the co-pilot side, by the way. Next we have a vertical speed indicator. Then we have a radar altitude. We can set the reference for the warning right here, and it will illuminate this thing. It also has a button, though I'm not sure what the button does. Let's continue left of the displays first. We have our airspeed indicator with some reference bar right here. Next we have this thing which shows us bearings to certain nav sources. We can switch between nav1 and ADF and nav2 and ADF right here. Next we have this thing which is wired to the nav1. We can actually set a course we want to fly here. And also note this, that while this one is slaved, this one is not. So this one will actually always align to a current heading, this one will not. Below that we have our DME. This is our DME1, so it's coupled to nav1. We can turn it off or on right here, and we can set it to DME hold mode, so it will keep its active frequency on the COM1 even if we dial in a new frequency into COM1. And in hold mode it will show H1 right here. We have another indicator down here, it's also a button actually. So this one says VG, it stands for vertical gyro. We have two vertical gyros in this plane. One is a standby one, and we can actually set this to use the standby one, which we can also see here. It says ATT2 in the PFD. So this is our PFD, it's basically an altitude indicator. We have the altitude window for the autopilot right here, which we can control. We also have the autopilot modes right here, so if we go to vertical speed mode, for example, we get a flight director and we get the vertical speed mode in the L select shown here. We have the AOA gauge, which we already talked about. We have the radar altitude, and we have a slip indicator down here. This is our Andy. It can do a lot of things. It obviously shows us a course to a nav8, and it also shows us these basically. Same thing basically as this thing on a digital form, but we can select them independently. So right now they're on nav1, nav2, and we can set them with the controls over here. First of all, this is for the nav8, so this is for our first nav8. We can deselect it, we can select it to nav ADF1, so nav1, ADF1 or FMS. And this is the same thing for the right hand side, for the bearings. We can only switch between nav2 and ADF2 here because we obviously don't have an FMS2 on the plane. We also have dimming controls here for these displays. So this is for the ND, this is for the PFD, and we have a switch right here for the radar altitude that will show, the decision height that will show on the PFD. We can set that independently of this one in case we want to have two separate ones. We also have a test switch that plays a sound, although I did not hear that sound during flight yet. Editing this video, I actually realized I forgot to talk about some buttons, so let's do this now. These ones over here, they are for the PFD and the ND. So let's start with this button, press the phone maybe. So we can switch between nav1, nav2, and the FMS right here. So these are our navigation source buttons basically. Next, let's jump over here. We have three views. We have a full view, which shows a full 360-degree HSI. Then we have this view, which only shows a portion of the HSI basically. And then we have a map view. So I've loaded in a departure here at Hanover, and it actually shows our waypoint. We can change the range by clicking this button. So right now we can see this is 50 miles. We can zoom in by clicking this. So this will actually go as low as 2.5 miles. And if we click it again, it will cycle through to 150. This button right here is for the flight director. So if we set heading mode, for example. So this right now is single queue, and this is the, I think it's called cross pointer CP. The next one will switch this ground speed indication in the bottom right of the ND to time to go to the next waypoint. We're not moving right now, so this is not showing anything, and we can take it again to go to ground speed. Then we have an elapsed time button. This will switch the same position to an elapsed time. We can click this to start timing and click that again to stop timing. It will show the elapsed time, contrary to this thing, and if we click it again, it will reset. We have yet another annunciator here for fan failures. And then we're finally done with this part of the cockpit. So let's move to this part now. So we have this thing, which is basically just a thing to input 3 digits. I usually use it to remember some speeds and just put them in there. This is our standby altitude indicator. We can actually cage this or push that to uncage. Next we have our radio panels. So we have lots of radio panels here. So this is COM1, COM2, NAV1, NAV2, ADF, transponder 1, transponder 2. We have volume controls for all these things that we can identify basically, and we obviously can manipulate the standby frequencies in ways we would expect these buttons to switch. For the ADF, we have some default ADF controls right here. We can swap the frequencies with this button. Not going into detail. We have the transponders right here. We have for each digit one of these controls. We can ident by pushing this ident button as well. And this thing will swap between the active transponders, so either transponder 1 or 2. Above that, we have our engine controls. So we have our N1, which shows both as a digital readout as well as an analog readout right here. We have our ITT only available as an analog readout. We have our N2 only available as a digital readout this time. And here we have our oil pressure and oil temperature. To the right we have our fuel flow and fuel quantity. Fuel flow is digital, fuel quantity is analog. Down here we have a weather radar, which is inoperative at the time because X-Plane doesn't have a weather radar yet. Next we have the pressurization controls. We can set the pressurization with this dial right here. We have the pressure gauge, which with the small hand shows us the cabin differential, with the big hand shows us the cabin altitude. We have a cabin dump switch, which is guarded and would dump the cabin pressure if we switch that into the forward position here. We have the pressure system select, which is an auto. If we do set this to manual, this will go off because we are now controlling this thing manually, and we can manually decrease and increase the pressure with this red switch. Above that we have the cockpit air distribution switch, which will distribute the air between the cockpit and the cabin. This will put most of the air into the cockpit. This will be a normal distribution. Coming to this right hand panel, we have the air source select, so this is for both the left and the right hand engine. We also have emergency off and fresh air right here. Next is the air condition switch. This can be either in the auto position, in the fan only position, or in the off position. Then we have a compressor light, and to the right of that are fan switches. So this one is a flat position, a high position, and a low position. This one is a high position, an auto position, and a low position. Then we have a defog fan, which we can also set into the high or low position. Next is our temperature control. This will automatically try to keep a pre-selected temperature, and we can also set this to hot and cold manually, so hot air or cold air. If we want to control this manually, we need to put this one into the manual position though. Let's continue with the right hand side panel. We have a temperature readout right here, which is either in degrees of Fahrenheit. This is our marker annunciators. We have the altitude indicator and the HSI on the co-pilot side. Nothing special there. We also have a DME coupled to the NAV2, so this thing's coupled to NAV2. Nav speed indicator, altimeter, vertical speed indicator, same thing as on the left. We also have an audio panel, same thing as on the left. And we have an oxygen indicator right here. We have the EOT, which we can activate or reset with this switch right here. And we have the PBS, which is an announcement system. We can power that on. We can select between different languages, between different phases of flights, and then play an announcement.
Welcome aboard this citation jet. We're delighted to have you with us on our flight.
Coming down to the pedestal, we have our trim wheel. We have our thrust levers, which we can bring into the idle position by moving the mouse over them until we see this up arrow and then click it. Oops, we have the controller again. And then we can move them with our thrust levers and bring them down to shut down the engine again. We have a flap lever, which has 4 positions. The 15-degree position for takeoff, the 35-degree position for landing. There's a 60-degree ground flaps position for rollout, which is to be used on the ground only, as the name implies. Below that, we also have some switches. We have our speed brakes. We have our thrust attenuators, so these things behind the engines. We can stow them. So stowing meaning they are not behind the engines, but the air gets out of the engines unobstructed, and there's a test position for them. We have an engine synchronizer switch, which can either sync the fan speed, so the N1 speed, or the turbine speed, the N2 speed, or be off, obviously. And below that, we have our FMS, which I will not go into detail right now. We can power it on with this switch, we can power it off by hitting the switch again, go to off standby, and go to confirm off, which will power it off. Below that, we have the autopilot controls for course, altitude, and heading, as well as pitch and turn. This turn button we always want to have in the middle position. If we don't have it in the middle position, the autopilot won't engage. So in order to bring that back into the center position, just click it when you get this hand symbol. Lastly, down here we have our rudder and aileron trims. And that concludes the tour of the flight deck. Actually, there's one more thing to talk about. There are different avionics options for this plane. So if you go to the CJ menu and then to the main menu, you'll see I'm right now on the standard avionics, which is also what I'll be using throughout the series, but there's also an option for dual GNS 530s. There's the GTN 750, which is the Reality XP one, and there's the GTN 750 XI, which is the TDS sim one. So that was the tour of the flight deck, and in the next video we'll finally go flying.